The threat is real, and no military installation is safe.
We're seeing increased extreme temperatures, we're seeing changes in precipitation patterns, we're seeing more severe weather events.
If the United States is to continue to compete with and surpass near-peer adversaries in both physical and virtual domains, learning to adapt to the environment at a more advanced pace is critical. From the devastation at Tyndall Air Force Base due to flooding and a Category 5 hurricane, to wildfires near Beale Air Force Base, every installation is at risk, and engineers are seeing the value in planning for extreme weather, while at the same time increasing capabilities and reducing reliance on fossil fuels.
Well, in the Climate Action Plan, it identifies, the negative impacts that the climate change is having on our facilities. And, the Air Force is one of the primary users in the federal government of fossil fuels. And by reducing our use of fossil fuels and our impact on the environment, we can help to minimize those impacts going forward. And it's really a mission imperative.
The Air Force is addressing inclement weather and natural disasters head on, outlining what moving forward looks like in the Climate Action Plan, a framework released by the Secretary of the Air Force which focuses on addressing climate change through three main objectives: reducing emissions, increasing capabilities, and reducing reliance on fossil fuels. But how will the Climate Action Plan do this, and why the urgency?
I can tell you with veracity, my first day on the job, almost a year and a half ago, the Intenko fire occurred on the day that I reported in. With that, it came extremely clear to me in very stark terms that we needed to make sure that we were doing everything we can to mitigate things like fuels, to reduce the dry grass that is in the local area, to understand that the infrastructure for energy that we had needed to have upgrades and needed to ensure that we would be able to have uninterrupted power coming to the base in the event of that kind of climatological threat.
By embracing new technologies and fundamentally rethinking everything from infrastructure to workflow, the Climate Action Plan leaves nothing off the table. For instance, when Tyndall Air Force Base was decimated by a Category 5 hurricane, engineers had their work cut out for them.
We've looked at climate models to anticipate what would future storms do, and how would we incorporate those future storms and sea level rise into the design of Tyndall Air Force Base. So one thing we did was we designed the minimum floor levels to be between 14 and 19 feet above mean sea level to account for those increased sea levels. We've also incorporated Miami-Dade code to ensure that the facility can withstand 165 mile per hour wind speeds.
Beyond infrastructure, other important factors are considered, like how the Air Force conducts business. The Air Force is the biggest fuel user in the federal government, which is one of the reasons why the department is prioritizing alternative sources of fuel.
Microgrids, photovoltaics, solar arrays, things like that, backup power areas, so that if we lose our primary source of power, that the mission can continue because they've got another source of power available on the installation.
One Air Force base in particular offers strategic advantages that make solar power especially inviting.
The one thing Edwards has, significant amount of open property and something to the effect of 95% illumination throughout the entire year. Very few clouds.
Dry, hot conditions with fields of overgrowth make wildfires a real danger on some military installations. They can take down flight line operations and destroy assets. But some Air Force bases have a low-tech solution that is highly effective.
We actually lease space on the installation so that we can bring the famous Beale cattle, the Beale cows, to our installation, especially in times like this, where we have a robust and healthy set of grasslands for those cattle to be able to graze.
Another Climate Action Plan initiative the Air Force is addressing is how vulnerable bases are to grid power outages. Beale Air Force Base was one of the first to simulate a power grid failure while maintaining daily operations.
On 2 November 2022, we executed an energy resilience readiness exercise on Beale Air Force Base. And we actually did two things simultaneously. One, we did some real-world work on our high-voltage system. And two, we shut off deliberately the power on the installation to test our ability to operate with limited power capability.
Issues like backup telecommunications functionalities and time limitations on diesel backup power generation came to the attention of base leaders so they could be addressed.
These are great learning opportunities to determine whether or not you can operate in a limited power scenario.
Other installations are also working on ways to become more efficient.
So the MEEP program is the Mission Execution Excellence Program, and it's aimed at looking at our operational efficiency.
The MEEP program at Travis Air Force Base incentivizes ideas on ways to improve workflow. Everything. Another technology that's having a huge impact Air Force-wide while simultaneously meeting Climate Action Plan objectives is virtual reality.
You can put VR on and it tells you, hey, do this. If you do not, this will happen.
VR has the potential to increase skill levels while saving fuel costs and reducing emissions. If you're not using an aircraft to train, you're not burning fuel. But it has additional benefits too.
It allowed them to adapt their in-house qualification to just be an approval through virtual reality.
The vertical pallet system is another way the Air Force is meeting objectives. In simple terms, it's a rack that allows cargo to be stacked, increasing payload area and reducing the number of aircraft needed for transportation. Reducing emissions and fossil fuel use while increasing capabilities is part of being climate informed, a decision-making process championed by leaders Air Force-wide. It takes past and projected climate factors and extreme weather events into account to help with planning and possible mission impacts. From high-tech to low-tech, the Air Force is open to any and all solutions that fall within the purview of the Climate Action Plan.